Hey everybody, what's up? It's you, man. I wanted to do a preview of each of the critical swing states in the 2024 election between Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. Here's the map as far as I filled in states that seemingly are going to flow to each of the candidates regardless of what happens. Virginia seemed to be like a state that the Trump campaign thought that they could go out and get. I feel like now we haven't seen any real polling, but uh, now it doesn't seem like that's a swing state. And with Kamala Harris picking Timothy Walz as her vice president, that probably takes out Minnesota as well. So these states, which was always going to determine the outcome of the election, but now they definitely will determine the outcome of the election: Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. I wanted to do a preview of every single one of these states over the next couple days on my Facebook and maybe on Instagram as well, and just kind of give my thoughts on what Donald Trump has to do to take each of these states and show how he's still the clear favorite for to win the presidency and win the electoral college. I don't think anybody expected Donald Trump to win the popular vote, which is what he was doing when Biden was in the race. If we look back at all these polls before Harris got into the race, Trump led almost every poll, and now that she's in the race, the polls have swung in her favor. I think it's a little bit fake. I think it's a little bit, it just doesn't seem realistic. And a lot of these polls are older data. The only poll that we have that is actually clear data, as I'm recording this on August 8th, is Rasmussen, which has Trump +5. She had kind of this honeymoon period, and I feel like we're kind of coming out of the end of that. But if you look at this day in history, Biden +6 at this point. Harris is trailing about 6 points behind that, and Clinton was +7. Harris, again, trailing now 7 points behind that. So Trump is still in his best position he's ever been in, and he's leading in all the swing states. So I wanted to go to first to, in my opinion, the most critical state that Donald Trump has to flip back if he wants a chance to win the presidency in 2024. Let's say that North Carolina goes into his column, which by all means looks to be the case, and would be a real upset if the Democrats could flip that state. I'm going to start with Georgia. I think Georgia is the most critical state for Donald Trump to flip. As we know, Joe Biden won this state in 2020. He carried the state by just 11,000 votes. And then in the Senate race, the Democrats won the Senate seat over Herschel Walker, lost the Senate seat to Raphael Warnock by almost 2%, just about 2% of the vote. He lost this seat by almost 100,000 votes. Obviously, turnout is lower when there's not a president on the top of the ticket, but to still lose a state like Georgia in 2 years after Biden won the state seemed like the state was trending left. If you remember, this is the trends in all of these near Atlanta, in Fulton County and Cobb County, DeKalb County. Trended really left. The suburbs are really a problem for Republicans in this state, as you see that most of the rurals turn more right. And if we look at the Senate election, all the rural areas turned more right than even 2020, but Atlanta continued to get more and more Democrat. So what does Trump have to do to flip this state? Well, let's look at the election shuffler here. So if we look at the state results, Democrats with 2,473,633 votes, the GOP with 2,461,854 votes. So, Georgia really was able to fix a lot of their election issues in 2020, which is going to be a big deal. There's not going to be mail-in ballots. Democrats can't, bribe people to stay in line with water bottles and whatever, all that stuff that was happening in 2020. And when we look at the polls here in Georgia, recent polls, Trump maintains about a statistical tie, but he still maintains the lead here in Georgia, and polls consistently underestimate Trump in Pennsylvania. But where's this state going to be won? It's going to be won in Fulton County. It's going to be won in DeKalb County. If you look at the 2022 results in these two counties in Atlanta, 380,000 votes for Joe Biden, 308,000 votes in Joe Biden. So he basically has 680,000 votes right out of the gate that Republicans have to make up for in all of these rural areas that obviously you see are very red, very, very strong red areas. So I think for Trump to take back the state, he needs to get better turnout in a lot of these rural parts of the state. So if you have, let's just say, 1% better turnout here, maybe 10% better turnout in this county. You want to start getting some of that turnout. But in my opinion, you really want to really get your turnout up in Fulton County, but I do not believe that the Fulton County and the DeKalb County, the black turnout, is going to be as significant as it was in 2020. You have to remember the political climate you were in back then. You're looking at the coronavirus pandemic, but mainly you're looking at the BLM riots and movements. And I just don't see blacks turning out in the way that they did in 2020. And let's just say it's just 5% less. Or maybe let's even say 4%, 5% less in Fulton County. That brings the margin down about 12,000 votes. And then if you bring the maybe just 5% here in DeKalb County, that brings the margin down to well, I don't know if it did it, but you adjust turnout by about 10%. That brings the margin down as well. So if you look at it now, Donald Trump right in margin to win the state. So if you have a lower turnout than you did in 2020, which I believe you will, and I think the Trump base is going to have the same turnout. If you had 74 million votes, how many of those voters realistically are not going to vote for him in 2024? I would say not a significant number. I would still say that the more Democrats who voted, or rather people who voted for Joe Biden in the 2020 election, would not vote for Kamala Harris in this election. The turnout is going to be lower on their end more than Donald Trump's end. So if turnout is lower in Fulton County and DeKalb County, and Trump can start to increase his turnout in these rural areas, this to me was more surprising in these rural areas, that these aren't all dark red, right? That and I think with Kamala Harris on the ballot, that is what's going to change the state. You're going to have these counties become more and more in favor of Donald Trump and shift more right. And I don't think the turnout is going to be as high as it was in 2020. And like I said, I just adjusted turnout by 5% in Fulton County, and I adjusted turnout by 5%. Not saying that Republicans are going to gain in these counties, but I'm just adjusting turnout. And just with that, just with a little bit of shuffling, Republicans now can win the state of Georgia, and that would be putting that in Trump's column. And the reason I think this is the most critical state is because now at 251, all he needs is Pennsylvania, and that's 270. But let's take it a step further. He also could win with Arizona and Wisconsin. He could win with Michigan. He could win with Michigan and Arizona. He could win with Michigan and Nevada. There's just so many more possibilities for Donald Trump to win the presidency if he can flip the state of Georgia. And if he doesn't flip the state of Georgia, let's say Kamala Harris gets Georgia, Michigan, Donald Trump has a tougher path. He's going to need 3 states here to win the presidency. And that's just a tougher path. So I think that Georgia is the most critical state for Donald Trump to flip. Right now, I would put it in his column. I would put it in about a very close, obviously. 0.6, I could see it being that close, just because with Biden, I couldn't see it being that close, but I can definitely see it being that close with Kamala Harris. So that's Georgia. Stay tuned for more. We'll go into the next few states as we look at the 2024 election and previewing of the big 7 swing states, those being Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. Thanks for watching.